Now, one of the series that we're doing on Friday night, we do different ones on Sunday and different ones on Friday. One of the series that I'm doing on Friday and that we rotate with is this linked to this awesome psalm that is happens to be filled with the secrets of living a life of God's will, His blessings, His abundance. It contains things like, this is the psalm that contains things like, don't worry about anything. Don't worry about those who do evil. Trust in the Lord and do good. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your ways to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will do it. And that's all these incredible things. You just take one verse and do a whole thing. So we've been looking at these keys, and I've shared a message of those keys so far. And now we go to the next one. And that is where we are, Psalm 37, verse 11. Very simple. But the meek shall inherit the earth and delight themselves in the abundance of peace. Now, this is especially cool because it just so happens that that's very familiar to you no matter what, because Messiah quoted from it when He did the Sermon on the Mount. And He said, blessed are the meek, for what? They shall inherit the earth. Well, that's from right here. Right here. The context of this is, it says, don't worry about those who are doing evil. We tend to worry about it. It says, don't worry about that. And it goes on, and then it goes on saying, listen, the meek or the humble will inherit the earth. The humble will. Now, what is that about? Now, my main thing I'm going to talk about tonight is what it means to be an heir, to inherit, to be an heir of God, which is crucial. But before that, it's talking about the humble. So let's talk about a little bit about humility. It says in Numbers 12:3, it says, Moses was the meekest man on earth, the most humble man. Now, who wrote that? Moses did. Still, it's true. He was being real. Moses was humble. What is humble? Well, you see, you think of humble, somebody who's quiet. But humble, this is Moses, okay? So it says Moses was humble. Let me tell you what humble is not. Humility is not hating yourself. Hating yourself is not only it's not humility, it's not of God. Humility is not so much a heart that is focused on how bad it is. It's a heart that is focused on how great God is. Moses was strong. He was an authority. He was decisive. He was a leader, yet he was humble before God. He lived a life that was knowing the presence of God. He's the one who was in God's presence. It says in Psalm 22, verse 26, the meek or the humble shall eat and be satisfied. The Bible speaks about the blessings of being humble. The blessings of being humble. See, if you're looking at yourself all the time, that's not humility. If you're looking at God all the time, that is humility because you're looking up. Your attitude is one that's looking up. That's a humble attitude. The Bible speaks continually about the blessings of it. What are the blessings of being humble? Humility. One, you're not distracted with yourself. You're not bound up by the limitations of yourself because you're not focusing on yourself. You're focusing on God. You see, when you're looking down, when you judge people, you're not humble. When you judge people, you're looking down. You're looking down on them. When you're looking up, you can't judge anybody. When you're looking at God, you're not judging anybody. You understand? So that's the difference. And so, might think that, well, if I'm hating myself, then I'm humble. No, you're just judging yourself, and you're focused on yourself, and that is no better than lifting yourself up, because you're both people who do that, those who lift themselves up, those who tear themselves down, are not looking at God. And when you're judging others all the time, remember, you have that same voice in your own life. You're going to judge yourself. It's going to be hard to live with yourself. So, the Bible says, judge not, lest you be judged. Well, that's about Judgment Day, but there's another application, because in the way you judge, even the way you judge others, it's going to come back to you even in this life. So, Messiah said, come to me, all who are weary and burdened down. My yoke is easy, I am humble of heart. In other words, When you are humble, one of the blessings of being humble is that you're not carrying the weight of the world. When you're humble, your yoke is light. When you are filled with yourself, your yoke is heavy. The Hebrew word for glory is the word kavod. Try it, kavod. That's a good thing. But when you glorify yourself, the word kavod also means heavy, weighed down. So when you're focused on yourself, you get heavier and heavier and heavier. When you let go, you lose yourself in God, you get lighter and lighter. And there's a cosmic force. Of course, it's the hand of God, but it's the way he also wove the creation together. And that is that the more prideful someone is, the more they're going to be cast down. I mean, it may not happen at the moment, it's going to happen. If you see somebody who's boasting, you feel like this person's just going to fall. The humble, there's a force that lifts up the humble and casts down the pride. The more prideful you are, the more you are apt to fall. Pride goes before a fall. But the more humble you are, the more protected you are against falling. Richard Wurmbrand, who was in prison for his faith in Romania, said the strongest people, the communists tortured the believers, they tried to break them. He said the strongest people were those who were the most humble. They're the ones who lasted, who could withstand anything. Now it says here, it says the meek shall, in Psalm 22 it says, the meek shall eat and be satisfied. Here it says, the humble shall inherit the earth. Now there's a word in Hebrew, you don't have to know Hebrew to know, there's a letter in Hebrew that follows when it says the meek shall, the letter that follows is the letter Y. When it says the meek, and then you got the letter Y, or the Hebrew Yud. Say Yud. Yud. When Jesus said, not one jot shall pass, he was saying in Hebrew, not one Yud will pass. Smallest letter. But the next word after it says the meek is this word, is this letter Yud. When you have a Yud at the beginning or a Y at the beginning of a Hebrew word like this, it means that it's talking about the future. There's a promise here. And what it's saying is that if you are the humble in God, there will always be a promise, there will be a future, there will be blessing. Humble yourself, you will be blessed in God. You're worrying about the future, you're worrying about, the Bible says that there's a blessing for those who are in his will. The Yud, the little thing about the Yud is just like, it looks like an apostrophe. It's the smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Just apostrophe. That's it. But it's interesting because this little apostasy begins some of the biggest words in Hebrew, the most important words. For instance, Yeshua, Jesus, Yud. God, Jehovah, Yahweh, Yud. Israel, Yisrael, Yud. I mean, all these things, Yud. Jerusalem, Yud. All the J's are really Y's. What's that telling you? The smallest letter, the Yud, actually begins some of the most important things in God. And there's a little thing you can get from that, very important. And that is, the greatest things in your life begin with the smallest strokes. Meaning, you have a life to live. Take a little step. Just take the first step. Because if you're so overwhelmed about all the things you have to do in God, you'll never do any of them. But if today you can just take the little thing, let me take a step towards that right now. Take a little step, and it's going to lead up to another step, and it's going to lead up to a whole life of change. It begins with a Yud, begins with a little thing there. And then there are also, there are those who say it's all, salvation is all God, and I don't have to do anything because it's all God. Well, yeah, we can't save ourselves. That's all the good. All is God. All comes from God, but He has a call for each of us, or it doesn't work. God wants me to stop saying, God will take this sin away from me when He's ready. No, He's ready already. He doesn't like any sin. He's ready. God will do this. God will have me, you spread the gospel when He's called. No, He's already called that. All of us are called to be active. People say, I don't know if I should witness to that person. Really? The Bible says, go out and tell everybody. Rather, question not serving God. Question not witnessing. Should I not be witnessing? Why? This is not right. Here, these people they don't know the Lord, and I'm not saying anything to them. Trust and do. People come from Sundays for counseling, and they'll counsel if they should trust God. Can I really trust Him? So, well, if you can't trust Him, what are you doing here in counseling? Believers sometimes live. Here on the other side is if they don't trust. See, that's saying I'm trusting, but I'm not doing. But here's the other side, those who do, but they don't trust. There are believers who live their lives as if God is not running the universe, or he turned away, and so they have to take care of everything. The weight of the world is on their shoulders. They got to do everything. If they don't do something, it's all going to fall. Everything's going to fall apart. Listen, God is running the universe. But you think, well, God's doing that, so you basically are taking up the job of God, that you have to do all this. If you act without trust, it's never going to be good. If you act without faith, it's never going to be good. Neither one. Asa without batach, works without faith, doing without belief or without receiving. When you do that, you're living from yourself, because you're not living from God. So either there's something extreme, that God will do everything, I don't do anything, or God's not doing anything, we got to do it. Neither of those things will bring a fruitful life. Work-centered or faith without works is not going to be fruitful. And that's not it, because either one, you're kind of on your own. It's God or you, but that's not salvation. Salvation is not God or you. It's God and you. It's God through you. Faith without action is dead. You end up fruitless. Action without faith ends up empty, and you burn out. And the works you do for God are not good. It's not just what you do for God, it's the way you do it. Is it really from God? The fruitful dynamic, the key for a fruitful life is batach and asa. Faith, trust, confidence, and acting. Act, do, go, move. That flow produces a fruitful life. Faith and works, trust and do. Faith is linked to doing. Faith is what allows you to do. The more faith you have, the more you are to do. It enables you to do things you couldn't do. Faith in trust, it empowers you. It enables you to step out, to do good. There's so many, I couldn't do so much stuff if it wasn't faith saying to step out and do all these things. All these things come from faith with our lives. And it's not 50-50. Well, okay, it's 50% faith, 50% action, works. No, it's not. It's not a balance. I'll do half faith, half this. It's faith, 100% faith and 100% works, meaning the faith becomes works, becomes the work. It flows. It's the same thing. Faith becomes work. It translates, it comes from God, and then it becomes it. So it's 100% both. It's a flow. In Genesis, Joseph got the blessing from his father, and he was told, Joseph is a fruitful branch. There's a key there, a fruitful branch. Messiah's will for this year, for your life, is that you bear much fruit and your fruit remains. Now, a cool thing, we were just at Nazareth this past autumn, and it says in the Bible that when Jesus went to Nazareth, or when his parents did, or when Joseph and Mary, it says they went there, as it was written, the prophet said he shall be called a Nazarene. And you look at that, but if you go to find the verse in the Hebrew scriptures, where does it say he shall be called a Nazarene? It's not there. You won't find it anywhere in the Hebrew scriptures. What does that mean? Is there a mistake? No. It doesn't say the prophet said. It says the prophets said. So what does that mean? It wasn't one verse. It's talking about the whole prophetic word. And so here's the thing. Throughout the Hebrew scriptures, Jesus, Yeshua, Messiah, the Messiah of Israel, as it's prophesying, is called the branch. It's called the branch. In Hebrew, one of the words for branch is semach. Try it. You got a lot of chuz tonight. It's okay. You'll survive. You can rest later. Semach. That's what it means, something that kind of sprouts out and grows. It's a branch, the branch. And Jeremiah says, Messiah, the man called the branch, or Zechariah, or my servant, the branch, the man called the branch. It's throughout. But then there is this one scripture of the branch in Isaiah 11, when it says, a shoot shall spring from the stem of Jesse, right? Famous one. But the word there for branch is the word netzer. Try it. Netzer. Well, when you get Netzer, at Netzeret becomes Nazareth. So here he's called the Netzer, the branch, the prophets, the branch, he's called the branch. And then from Netzer, you get Netzeret, which is how we say it, we know as Nazareth. Well, so Messiah grew up in the place called the branch place. That's where a branch grows up. He sprouted up. How cool, how perfect. But here's a secret for a fruitful life. Messiah is the branch. So it's called Jesus the Nazarene because he was from Nazareth, but it also means Yeshua, the Messiah, is the branch. What does a branch do? A branch produces fruit. What produces fruit? A branch does. So if you're a branch, why is he the branch? Many reasons, but one reason is he's the most fruitful one who ever lived. He's the most fruitful one. And what's one of the first names that believers were ever called? They were called Nazarenes. Okay, right? But in Hebrew, that would be like little branches. We are branches. He's the branch, we're branches. So one of the key secrets of your life to have a year of fruitfulness, how do you bear fruit? It's found in the branch. What is a branch? A branch is a vessel. A branch has two ends, right? One end, I mean, if it's a certain size, if it's completed, one end goes to the tree. The other end bears the fruit, correct? So what does that mean? One end is always receiving. And it's getting the sap, it's getting the nutrients, and you can't see what it's doing. It's happening inside, it's happening invisible. So the first thing of a fruitful life is that Messiah was that. He was always receiving from God, from the Father, always. He's the one who went up. It says he went up to pray. He went up to him, Father. You're always in prayer in the presence of God. So he's receiving from God every moment. He's receiving. So the first key of a fruitful life is receiving from God. And that's that's the faith part. Because faith is what opens the door to receive from God. The trust, the time in God's presence, the receiving of his love, the receiving of all that is God. If we don't do that, we got nothing. You're only saved because you did that. Whoever has many has received. So receiving. But then the other end of the branch is not receiving, really. I mean, it's producing, and it's producing fruit and leaves. It's producing, and it's visible, and the world can see it. So what's the other side? The other side of the branch is it's receiving, and it's always giving, producing, works, action, because you can see it. Everybody can see the fruit. So it's what you do in your life, that's your fruit. What people can see. I mean, what touches the world, what touches others, what you give to others, how you bless others, your ministry, all those things. That's the fruit of your life. All the good that God put in, but that's the fruit of your life. When it goes out, it's the fruit. So here is the key, right here. And that is the secret of a fruitful life. It sounds, we know about branches our whole life. Yet this can change your life if you do what the branch does. Hi, I'm Jonathan Cahn, and I hope you were blessed with the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Feel free to share your reactions with your comments and how you were blessed, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Pleasure is built also by God, before it gets twisted by the enemy, is built to keep you alive. It's there, part of it. For instance, you eat food, you have pleasure. Why? Because if you don't, you're gone. Sexuality has pleasure to keep life alive. Some things, though, that aren't that simple, they require another element. For example, food gives me pleasure, but if I don't have money, I can't get food. So my mind will adjust, and it'll actually give pleasure, or our minds will adjust that we actually will get pleasure out of this green paper. Okay? Because money, having this, I can do other things. So my mind actually attaches it, so therefore I do. For instance, when when money becomes the end in itself, then it's all messed up. Now we can go farther. For instance, say there's a job or a career that's gonna help us. Well, we hear about that career, or something happens, a door opens, we get pleasure because it's ultimately linked to life. Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you get up early in the morning, especially if your work is not that amazing? Because of the principle. Because in your mind, you say, if I don't get up and I don't work, I'm going to have pain. I'm going to have not money, I'm going to have pain there. So therefore, I get up and I do this. Okay. Or look at people in gyms. They're lifting weights. I mean, sweating. It doesn't look fun at all. Running, sweating. It doesn't look like anything you want to do. Why do they do it? And some of you might be those people. Get out. No, okay. Because in their minds, they've associated it. They associate the exercise with other things that bring pleasure. Health. If I get health, I want to do it. Or it's going to make me look better. So that's the joy in it. I'm going to attract, a wife or husband. That's the joy. For some reason, so they're associating pleasure with this thing that's hard to do. That's why they do it. Otherwise, if there was no thing at the end of it, why do that? Then there's the other side of the coin. Pain has the power to make you avoid things. You put your hand on something too hot, pain. But there are other things that can cause pain that are not like that. So your mind, for instance, if you don't pay your taxes, you can go to jail. So your mind says, there's pain in the thought of not getting this done. Something you would otherwise, never do in your right mind. Give money to the government? That's crazy. So therefore, your brain is saying, okay, there's pain because I'm going to be in trouble. Okay. Same with not going to work. So it's all this thing there is motivating us all the time. And the thing is, the enemy uses it, but we can turn it around. And so this is what I call the law of the carrot. You see, when you want to make a donkey do something that you want to do, you put a carrot in front of it. Now, maybe a different animal, I don't know, but that's a carrot, so it'll keep walking to that carrot. So you got the donkey, you took something it took pleasure in, and you used it to get it to do what you wanted to do, right? The donkey doesn't want to move for no reason, but associating with a carrot, they'll do it. And then you have the stick, donkey and the stick, the pain. Well, a stick is, the donkey will feel pain if it gets hit. So therefore, it's natural. Now you're associating something that you don't want the donkey to do. So therefore, you use pain. So therefore, that's how animal trainers do those acts. Because, the animal does what they want. They give it, here's the snack, here's a fish, here's this thing. And they get rewarded so then that they end up doing exactly what the trainer wants to do. There are in China right now, they have something called the social credit system. If you do something in China that the Communist Party doesn't want you to do, you're in trouble. Well, if you do something they do want you to do, like you praise them online, you go to a party event, you bring your children to a party event, it rewards you. You can travel on the trains. You can get a better job. You can get a better education. It's all tracking you now. That's what they're doing. But if you post something that's against the government, you lose credit, you can't get on the train, you can't get the job, and your children may be kicked out of school. So you begin associating what the government wants of you with pleasure. And you begin associating what the government doesn't want with pain. You understand? So what they're doing is, by this, they're controlling everybody. You're rewired. So they don't have to oppress people anymore. The people will oppress themselves. They'll do it for the government. It's a new level of totalitarianism. It's happening in the West too. Not just the government, but through the media, through the culture. You do this, you get canceled. And so you cancel yourself. I'm not going to do it because it's control. And so the woke agenda is controlling you by this principle. The enemy uses it. He wants you to associate the things of God with no joy, no pleasure, even pain. And through such things, that's how he wants to control you. So the enemy will always seek to do that. And, for instance, in marriage, he'll seek to throw in the stick, throw in some pain. You had an argument to get you misunderstanding, hurtful word, to take away your joy from something that's of God, marriage. The enemy will use the carrot. This came up last Sunday when I spoke. It was Purim. I spoke about Haman as a shadow of the enemy and how it reveals what the enemy tries to do. Haman said to the king, if it pleased the king, in other words, he wanted the king to do what he wanted, but he said to the king, if it pleased the king, and he also gave him money. He rewarded him to get the king to do what he wanted. That's what the enemy does. He uses the pleasure principle. Why do people sin? Sin is destructive. Why did they do it? Why do you do it? Why do we do it? The enemy associated it with pleasure. Look at the first temptation. The fruit. The fruit. It's going to bring them death, but he tells them it's going to bring them knowledge, and they're going to be like God. So in their mind, that's pleasure, so they partake of that which is going to kill them. Look at the gods of the nations back then in the Bible. Moloch, Baal. They actually have the Israelites offer up their own children on the sacrificial altar. How warped is that? They told them, the gods were, that if you do this, you're going to be prosperous. They put pleasure on it. The enemy twists people's circuits. People actually do things that are going to destroy them. It says, love does not delight, takes no pleasure in evil. There are people, though, who do take pleasure in evil because they've been twisted. The wires got crossed. They delight in things that also bring them harm. Not just drugs and sexual immorality, but some people are drawn into abusive relationships. And they keep doing it because they're wired. They got it messed up. The enemy did it. Self-harm, self-destruction. The enemy uses it. It speaks in Proverbs how the adulteress, and it could be adulterer, either way, tempts the man. In Proverbs 7 it says, with her many persuasions she entices him. With her flattering lips she seduces him, and he goes like an ox to the slaughter. Proverbs 9 says similarly, the one who tempts says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he doesn't know that the dead are there. Her guests are in the depths of Sheol, or hell. Flattering lips, it says. She tells him what he wants to hear, what gives him pleasure. She entices him, seduces him, but it's like an ox going to the slaughter. Her house is the way of death. The other one says, stolen water is sweet, sweet. It's pleasant, pleasure. But he says at the end, there's death at the end of that road. And so that is, the enemy joins together all these things. Hell with pleasantness, sweetness, by using the carrot principle. He brings people to destruction. And so since adultery is not of God, he'll try to associate it with pleasure. And sometimes he'll have it the same way. He'll give a believer, they'll have a hard time in the marriage. At the same time, someone else will come along who is the pleasure one, who is the adulteress, the situation. And the time someone's having problems with their marriage, then he introduces flirtation. He can destroy a marriage, a life. So he holds the carrot. He holds the alcohol as if it's good and sweet, but your end is destruction. Holds the carrot of pornography. Sexual immorality as if it's sweet and good, but its end is destruction. To live a focused life, I have to decide, you have to decide, that life is not going to determine my course. Circumstance is not going to determine my course. Because if I don't have a goal, then I'm going to be just brushed away, just back and forth by circumstance. People are not going to determine my goal unless it's God talking through them. Only God. And therefore, I'm not going to live, and you're not going to live reacting to everything, reactively. Because if you react to everything, it means you don't have a goal. I mean, yes, there are things you got to address. That's not. But you're going to live proactively. Meaning I'm not going to be just responding to the next event, the next problem, and hoping things go well. I have a purpose. I've got a mission. I'm moving ahead. Now let's say it's the middle of the night and you're thirsty. You have a goal. I want to get a cup of water. So you have a goal. You do this all the time. So to get that done, I get up. I put slippers on. If you have slippers, I just have socks. You go down to the kitchen or wherever the kitchen is. You get the cup, turn on the water, and you drink. Very simple. You all done it. But you had a focus to do that. Now, we focus all the time on little things. But often with the bigger thing of our life, we don't. So we do things successfully, little things, but then with the bigger things, we don't have that. We don't apply it in the same way. I have a bigger goal. I got a bigger mission. I have a bigger thing to do. So you get things done small, but the big things are not getting done. The overall life. Now, so your first thing is you got the overall goal. Why am I on earth? Write it down. Then I may have goals under that God has told me, hey, I know this is part of my life. I know this is part of my calling. I know this is who I am. And these are things that I am. So those are other things. Now it could be other things. Now, example. You might be saying, I wish I had a better marriage. Okay? But convert that into a goal. Don't let it just be a wish. My goal is to have a better marriage. Now it's part of what I do. Now it's part of my aim. Now I have a purpose. Now how do I do it? Well, if there are things that I'm doing that are not helping my marriage, I get it out. If there are things that I'm not doing that would better help it, I start doing it. See, the goal determines everything else. You might be saying, I wish I had a closer walk with God. Well, that's good. That's a good wish, but now convert that. Because yes, we can pray that, but we have a part in that. Make it a goal. My goal is to have a closer walk with God. So now what am I doing that's hindering my closer walk with God? I need to stop those things. And what am I doing? What do I need to do in part of my closer walk with God? Let me start doing it. Or you might be saying, listen, I wish I didn't have fear. I didn't have anxiety. I wish that. Well, that's good. And pray for that, but also convert it into doing something. Convert it into my goal is to overcome fear. My goal, it changes the dynamic. You're not just sitting there waiting for the next, now I've got a goal. My goal is, so now what am I doing or not? What are things that I'm doing that are actually contributing to my fears and anxieties? And what can I do that would lead me to overcome my fear? How about taking an anti-fear action with God, going up and sharing the gospel with someone? You're afraid of this? Go right into it with God. Do something about, or I wish I was fulfilling my calling. Hey, convert that into a goal. My goal is to fulfill my calling. What is slowing down my calling? What is going against my calling that I'm doing? Now, how do I get that out? And what can I do now that's going to speed it up? Being faithful in little. I wish I could live in purity. Make it a goal. My goal is purity. So what do I do? What do I need now? What can I do? I wish I could live victoriously. Make it your goal. What do I need to do? Write down the purpose. Because I'm saying write it down. Because if you don't, it's just going to be this thing there. You got to make it real. Write down the purpose. What's the mission of my life? What's the purpose of my life? And then what am I called to do? And what do I need? How do I do it like Paul did? Paul prayed, I'm sure, Lord, fulfill my calling. I'm sure he prayed all the time for that. But he also said, I run the race. I've chosen to do it. Write it down. Then write down the details. What do I need to do specifically? What new habit should I be taking up? What old habit should I be ending? Break up your goal into parts. Let me tell you what I mean. You can't do it all at once. You can't live a life of victory today. You can't achieve everything that God has for you to achieve today. Today is today. But you can take one step today of that victorious life. You understand? You can do it. Break it up. Because otherwise it's too big. You can't do anything with it. Break it up into something very small. That's the secret. Make it specific. Make it detailed, not general. My goal is to become a better person. Good. That's good. But that's general. If it's very general, I'm not going to do it. But if I do it, hey, that is my big goal, but now I'm making it specific. My goal today is to bless that person by giving them a gift, by visiting them. That's specific, you can do it. And that will begin filling the other one. Make it specific, make it near. There's something you can do today. Make it small, start with small. Remember I told you about focus. What happens when a big amount of energy gets focused to a little spot? Power, okay? Power. So you don't have to don't think I'm doing everything today. But if David could overcome Goliath by being focused in God and believing in God, that's focus, that's power. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. Love, all of you get into that love of God. Amen. Remember, the smaller the step and the more you focus, the more energy goes into it. So let me tell you, think about that. The thing is this, you can't necessarily become overnight the most holy person, but today you can take a holy act and you can focus on it. You may not be able to lift 200 pounds, but you can focus on lifting 20 pounds, then you've done something. Better to lift 20 pounds than to struggle with something you can't do. You can't overnight be a super believer, but you can take a step, concentrate it all on what I have to do today as a super believer. One super little step. Little step. What can I do today? You can't maybe overcome a lifetime of sin today, but you can take one step to turn that thing down today. Focus on that one thing that you can do, and that'll lead you. That'll be the next step and the next step and the next step. What blessing will come? This is spiritual today and very practical and spiritual. What blessings will come with a focused life? It'll change failure to victory. You'll see breakthroughs. The walls you're hitting against will actually break. And you'll do more than you could ever do before. You won't live defensively, you'll live offensively. You won't react to the world, you'll act upon the world as the light of the world God called you to be. A focused vessel doesn't react, cuts through, moves forward like the front of a rocket, becomes unstoppable like Paul. You'll not only accomplish much, you will do it faster. God's purposes will speed up. It cuts through obstacles. You won't be pounded by the problem all the time. You'll be cutting through it because you've got a goal. You won't be living as somebody who's wounded by the enemy. You'll live as one who does damage to the enemy's kingdom. Become a focused vessel. Live with an aim. Live with a goal that God's called you for. You'll have your breakthrough. You'll have your victory. And you'll be the success God called you to be. When the axe is sharp, will come success. When your life is focused, you will have your breakthrough. And you will live a life of victory. See, the first thing is you're not to live following after pleasure, because then you're in trouble. But you can use the principle of pleasure for God. It can change your life. Same with pain. You're not to live your life trying to avoid any kind of pain. But if you use the principle, even pain, for God, it can actually change your life. For instance, we are to seek for righteousness. Seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness. All these things will be added to you. Now, the thing is, if you make pleasure a servant of that aim, it'll change everything. Let me tell you what I mean. If you make pain a servant of that aim, of the call of God, if you use the principle, if you associate something with pleasure and joy, it's going to be hard for you not to do it. If you associate something with pain, it's not pleasurable, it's going to be very hard for you to do it. Okay? If you associate something with pleasure, it's going to be very hard for you to stop doing it. So how do you do it? The first thing is to separate what has been joined together. And that is, or that which the enemy put together, separated for God. Let me tell you what I mean here. The adulteress in the proverb looks like she's alluring. It's beautiful, looks like pleasure. But the end is death. So listen to what Proverbs 5 says. The lips of an adulteress, and again, it's adulterer depending on who you are, drips honey, sweet. The sweet is smoother than oil, her speech. Okay, so it's sweet. But then it says, but the end is, she is as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. So the end, it says she goes down to death. And so therefore, it leads to something. It goes on to say this. So don't go that way, it says in Proverbs. Wisdom. Otherwise, you'll give your strength to others, your years to the cruel one. Strangers will be filled with your strength. If you give in to adultery, you could lose your family, lose your house. Someone else will be getting this, and you'll be consumed. It's saying what appears to be sweet is actually bitter. So don't get fooled by it. Look to the end of that thing. The end is full of pain. The key is when you're being tempted, you need to look at the end of where it's leading you. With any sin, it's like your enemy is presenting you with a bottle of poison, but he decorates it with flowers and puts a beautiful label on it, makes it smell good. That's what the enemy does. That's what the enemy is presenting you. And so you have to look at that and say, see through the flowers, see through the beautiful label and say, this is poison, this is death. I don't want it no matter how good it looks. Man sees a beautiful woman, he's going to be tempted. If the man sees, though, a roadway to hell, if he falls in adultery, he's going to be able to resist that temptation. Not just death, but the pain that sin brings you. You know what? Listen, I began to touch on this on Sunday, but this is so important. So important what I'm telling you here. When you're being tempted, feel the pain of where it's going to lead you. Because the more you feel the pain of it, the less you're going to go through the pain of it. You think about, how am I going to feel if I give in to that temptation? I'm going to feel terrible. So feel terrible. Feel it now before you do it, and you won't do it. Or think about this. Think of, if I keep giving into that sin, where am I going to be in 10 years from now? Where am I not going to be 10 years from now? Because what? Because I hindered my life. I never went to the other level because do I still want to be that? Feel that pain of that 10 years later, and you won't do it. When you're tempted, you can turn down. See, if you think something is joy, you're not going to turn it down. If you see the pain, you're going to turn it down. Think of all the blessings I'm going to forfeit. I'm not knowing in my life because I keep giving in to that little stupid pleasure. There was a famous celebrity, I won't name his name, but knowing that adultery was wrong, he wasn't a Christian, but he knew adultery was wrong, and he had a fear of God, and he had done a lot of adultery. So when he was tempted, he literally would take a match, hold it near his finger, and think of hell, and he would turn down adultery. Now, I'm not saying to do that, but the principle was the same. Another man, who's known in many quarters, didn't want his children to fall into drugs. So he took his children down to a drug rehab place to see the pain of it, see the ugliness of it. And by that, they were inoculated because they associated the end from the beginning, the pain. Whenever they thought of drugs, they remembered that trip. So they will never know that pain, God willing. Whatever sin or habit or action that is not good, if you want to break it, associate it with the pain over and over again until it sticks, and then you won't do it. Apply the temptation to gossiping. Think of God's pain when you gossip. But also think of how evil it is. Apply that to anything. You're tempted by a substance, you're tempted by a drink, you're tempted by whatever that is. Look at the end and see it, feel it, you won't do it. Sexual temptation, pornography. Look at the death of it. That sexual sin. Think of the pain of it. Think of the fire. That bad temper, that outburst of anger, you're doing it, and yet think of how it's damaging the people around you. Is that what you want? Or you're being mean or cold? Think of where that's going to leave you in the end. Or that little flirting, that indulgence in your thought life maybe. It's not what God's will is. Apply it. Keep thinking, where is that going to lead me? Do I want destruction? Do I want this in my walk? Do I want my walk to be destroyed? My ministry to be destroyed? Why do I want that? Associate it. See the end. And then there's the other side of the secret. The things that are right and good that you know you should do, but you're not doing. You know are good. You know it's that way. You're called to it, but you don't do it because they don't always feel good in the short term. Or you don't feel anything. I have other things that I'd rather just sit back, watch television because that gives me some cheap pleasure. But it's easier than taking time to be praying in God's presence. But how do you feel at the end of watching hours of television? How do you feel when you're in God's presence? Example, you know you should be spending more time with God, more time in prayer, but you don't. You know you're supposed to give, but you should be giving, more generous person, but it kind of hurts. You know you should be kinder to your loved ones, to your family, to your parents, to your children, to your wife, to your husband, but you know you should be more in the Word. You know you should be serving in ministry. You know you should be doing the Great Commission. You know you should be fulfilling your calling. You should be worshiping and praising God, not just here. The reason why we're not always doing that is because you're not associating it with the joy that it actually is. You see, you're just seeing the beginning. You might be seeing the cross, you're not seeing the resurrection. What does it say about Jesus? For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. He can endure anything because he saw the joy of your salvation. The reason we are not doing it, it's hard to do something if you don't think there's anything of joy in it. It'd be hard to do it. You're fighting against the wind. The thing is, the enemy has tried to, the same way he tries to take the carrot and use it to get you to do things that are wrong and bad for you, he tries to take the stick and use it with the things of God and make it feel that, hey, there's nothing there for you. But the things of God always lead to joy. Always. The key is to link them back to joy in your life. Look down ahead. How am I going to feel if I become a real person of God's presence? How am I going to feel? What will happen if I spend more time with God? Think about the blessings that'll come in your life. Picture yourself filled with the presence of God, the joy of the Lord, the blessings of that. What will happen if you get deeper in God? You put off the old, put on the new, more the new. Think of all the joys and blessings you're going to have. When you give, God says, he promises he's going to bless you. if you give. So instead of focusing on what you're giving, look at the end of that. Focus on God is going to bless. I don't know what the blessing is, but he's going to bless me. And that's not a bad thing to do. It's a good thing to do because you're going to be a giving person.